You are listening to the Erica and McAfee podcast, where we share stories of grief and loss due to miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, and journeys of trying to conceive and infertility. Welcome to episode 3 of the Erica and McAfee podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/Erica. In today's episode, my husband, Brandon O. McAfee, pastor of Gaskins Chapel African Methodist Episcopal Church, shares his perspective of our losses and details of our story of our rainbow baby Maxwell, also known as Super Mighty Max. Brandon shares how our losses impacted him and his walk with Christ as a pastor, and how we can trust God through our grief, no matter the circumstances. This episode is dedicated to my father, who I lost almost 18 years ago on the day that this episode goes live on August the 16th. Never there is a day that doesn't go by that I do not remember him and the impact that he's had on me and the 14 years that I had him, and as an adult, how much that has impacted me in my grief journey. And I just wanted to say that I love you, Dad. I miss you, Father, and that I know that you have been my guardian angel, shining down and smiling on me all of these years. Hey, everyone. This is Erica. I'm coming here sitting beside my husband, my best friend, and my pastor, Brandon McAfee. And last week I shared my perspective of our losses, but I wanted him to sit down and just talk to it from a man's perspective. So, honey, can you go ahead and share your perspective of our loss from BJ to Brielle to our journey of having Super Mighty Max?
All right. Well, first of all, let me say thank you for the opportunity to be in your podcast. Such an honor. I'm just so proud of you for stepping out on faith and launching this podcast, beginning this journey. You are inspiration, and you make me want to start my own podcast. And
so when are you going to start it?
Soon and very soon.
Okay, please. Please, no singing.
Soon, one day. You'll be the first to know when I do.
I'm sure,
you're going to help me do it.
I'm probably edit it for you.
Yes. But it is truly an honor and a privilege, and I'm grateful to be on your podcast with you. And thank you for allowing me this time. My perspective and my reflections from the loss of BJ to Brielle to the birth of Maxwell. Well, first and foremost, was extremely excited when we found out that we were having a baby. Of course, we didn't know at the time what we were going to have, but when we found out that we were having a boy, just so excited. Brandon Oscar McAfee Jr. is what we decided that we would name him. And, during that time, for me personally, I tried to do all I could leading up to his birth to become a better man, to be the type of man that I would want him to grow up to emulate. And so naturally, when we lost BJ, I was devastated. Much like yourself, I was devastated. I had a lot of questions. God, how could this happen? God, why me? God, why? We did all the right things. We went to the prenatal classes. We bought the house, decorated the baby room. You were eating well. We tried to do all the right things to make sure that we had a healthy baby. All the ultrasounds looked good. The blood work looked good. I mean, things look good, for the most part. Things look good. there were no indicators or signs that said something's going to go wrong when we give birth to Brandon Jr. And then on that day, November 29th, 2012, I remember sitting in the room, and I believe Facebook Live wasn't around back then, so I didn't post a video, but I remember posting a post on Facebook and doing like a countdown that our son was about to enter into the world. Because we went to the hospital. We know that you had to be induced in labor. So I just remember just the excitement for me building up that I'm about to be a father. I'm about to meet my son. You know, I took off work. Just all of the emotions of what I was expecting. And then being in that operating room, I felt like we were there for all day. But then being in that operating room and they opening you up, taking the baby out, and no crying, no sounds. And initially, I'm not going to say naturally, initially, I thought everything was okay. I mean, I wasn't alarmed. I know you were alarmed, but I wasn't alarmed because, I don't know, for some reason, I didn't think that because he didn't cry, that was a sign of trouble to come. But I do remember vividly what you said on last week when the doctor was a black doctor. Mm-hmm. And I believe he was the anesthetist. That's correct, right?
I don't know what you trying to say, but
that's the doctor who gives the medicine to put you to sleep and stuff like that.
Anesthesiologist?
Yeah, same thing.
Anesthesiologist.
But I think it's yeah.
Anesthetist.
Anyway.
Anesthesiologist.
That too. I don't know where I got that from. I believe that's a word though.
Right.
But I remember him. Mm-hmm. And I remember being in the back and he being to my right and him saying, "Oh, sugar honey iced tea."
Right.
And I'm like, okay, something is wrong. To where I'm back there and I see them now move BJ to my left. They're operating on him. They're trying to give him oxygen. They're trying to revive him, resuscitate him, doing all they can to get him to breathe. And nothing's working. And it's a quiet panic. Like they're panicking, but they're trying not to panic in front of us. But I can tell like something's just not right. The atmosphere is just all wrong. To where they take BJ out the room. They move us to, I guess, post-op, I guess.
It was post-op, right.
They move us to post-op. And it just becomes a blur, and all I know is they call us, and no, they come in and say BJ didn't make it. That he lived 41 minutes. I think last week you said 39, but it was 41. Just a little correction. It's 41 minutes.
Oh gosh, it's not that serious.
And it was devastating, man. It was just devastating. To have family there, it was devastating. And to plan a funeral.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't really talk about that, the funeral part, but yeah, we did plan a funeral for him. Yeah,
having to go to the funeral home, pick out a casket, we got a little white suit for him.
Yeah, and that was tragic for me going into Burlington Coat Factory trying to find something to bury him in because he was a small baby, and it's hard to find small gowns or clothing for kids that are smaller. And besides, a Christian gown is normally for bigger kids because normally people christen their children when they get older. So I had a breakdown in Burlington. My mom literally had to take me out of Burlington because I couldn't handle being around all those baby clothes.
Yeah, and I even remember that the casket, I believe, either the casket or maybe the whole funeral in general costing like $600, and in between $600 and $700. Mm-hmm. planning that, I remember having a funeral, the graveside funeral. Pastor Tony Boone, preaching a eulogy from 1 Samuel.
Yes.
I mean, I remember it all. And just wrestling, just mad. I remember who wasn't there, who was there. Just things I remember.
Right. Why were you so mad?
Because I felt like we did everything. We tried to do everything right to prepare for a baby boy, for a child. And no child came.
Right.
Like, we tried to do everything right, and it yielded no results.
So how did you feel
baby.
as a minister, as a pastor who goes out and is going out every Sunday preaching the word and preaching the gospel and trying to uplift and inspire people, and you're faced with a tragedy and a tragic loss like this? You know, how did you get the courage to go out how did you get the courage to go out and preach to people the next Sunday? Because essentially that's what you did.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't preaching at the time. I wasn't pastor.
You weren't? Okay.
No,
okay.
But I felt cheated. Mm-hmm. I felt robbed. I remember, this is in 2012.
Yeah, it was. I forgot the time frame.
And so I remember, I think it was earlier in 2012, having a conversation with my bishop at the time. And him telling me, what are you going to do in ministry when you're faced with a couple who loses a child? And we were talking about something else, but I remember him asking me that question. At the time, I was stumped. I'm thinking, I don't know. I've never been faced with that. A couple losing a child.
Right.
And it was almost as if he was speaking prophetically to me in one way, in some sense, and preparing me for what's going to happen to us. And I remember that conversation came to my mind when, at some point in reflecting, you know, after we lost BJ, you reflect and think about a lot of things. Mm-hmm. So I remember that conversation. I remember talking to another mentor, and him telling us to go to the Boone's church.
Right.
Suggesting, and him saying, if I know anything about Reverend Tony Boone and Reverend Melody Boone, is they know how to get through a storm, survive a storm.
Right.
Because they lost a child before as well. And not knowing that a few months later that we will lose a child.
Right.
That we will be faced with a similar storm as they faced in the loss of their daughter. Mm-hmm. I remember sitting in church one day in December. Mm-hmm. And it was the midweek service. The choir was singing, preacher preached, and thinking that this whole thing was a lie. Just being so mad. Mm-hmm. But, you know, through prayer, through time, scripture reading, just trying to encourage myself. You know, I rebounded, you know, just got back up. You know, tried to pick myself back together. And then fast forward to a few months later, we try again, right? Mm-hmm. But let me rewind before I go into that. I remember shortly thereafter, right. I think I took a week off from work. At the time I was working at Target and going into work. And that was the hardest thing because you go in and everyone has heard, Brandon lost a baby. For the most part, everyone heard, and to have to go in and people ask how you doing. People want to talk to you.
So how did you react to them?
I don't remember it, but it was sad. It was hard.
It was hard.
Sometimes I cried.
Well, some people didn't want to talk to you because they didn't know what to say, or
I don't remember really. I just know it was just difficult.
Yeah.
A lot of different emotions.
Yeah. That's understandable.
Well, extremely difficult. And some days just not wanting to be there. Some days just breaking down. Mm-hmm. Crying. Mm-hmm. But then, again, fast forward, we find out that we're having another baby. This time we're having a girl. We're having Brielle. So we're excited again. I'm excited. Having a girl. We're going to name her Brielle. And then you go out of town to Wilmington.
I did, for work. Mm-hmm.
You call me. Things aren't going well. You're having some spotting, some bleeding. You come home, and I remember waking up in the middle of the night and having to drive you to the hospital and giving birth to another child. And, losing another child. But you having to give birth to her prematurely at 18 weeks. And that was July 12th, 2013. Mm-hmm. And just thinking to myself, all right, God, we lost one child.
Right.
Didn't ever think we would lose one child, but we lost one child. We'd never lose another child. Like, that never even crossed my mind that we could lose two children. Mm-hmm. I just felt like
we trusted that God would provide us with this baby girl. We knew that that pregnancy was going to be completely different because of what are the odds that another child be born with the same lung issues that our son BJ passed away with.
Right. So just never imagine that we'll lose another one.
Right.
And then we did.
Yeah, we did.
Then we did. And so that was extremely hard. It was difficult.
For you, the listeners of the Erica and McAfee podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. Audible has over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Personally, I recommend John Gray's new book, I Am Number 8, or Sarah Jakes Roberts' new book, Don't Settle for Safe. Both are great inspirational books to help keep you going and just to remind you that you are not alone on this journey and that God has not forsaken you. To download your free audiobook, go to www.audibletrial.com/Erica. That is www.audibletrial.com/ERICA for your free audiobook. Go ahead from your perspective on what happened with Maxwell.
But again, we were in a doctor's office like every single day. My job, they already knew the history. I was at a new job at the time, working in the school system, and they had gave me the blessing, hey, Brandon, we understand what's going on. If you need to slip away to go to a doctor's appointment, go ahead and go. No problem. Do what you got to do. So I really appreciated them for this, the freedom to go to make sure that I can be there in support of you and the baby. And, of course, we were praying and
tell them what you did.
Baby bush and beard. I didn't cut my hair nor my facial hair for the whole pregnancy. That thing grew long, so that was interesting. I had people. One of my homeboys, he grew his beard out with me. Shout out to him. I appreciate that. But that was the whole baby bush and beard, and so I just let that grow out. Just praying that it's almost like a fast. Like, I'm not going to cut my hair. I'm not going to cut my facial hair. Praying that you'll deliver us a healthy baby. And I remember sitting in Tripp's restaurant and us settling on names for Maxwell. It was me, you, and your sister, Ashley. And us sitting in the restaurant and us settling on the name of Maxwell. We were actually here in Virginia Beach. That restaurant's no longer in existence at that location, but we were here in Virginia Beach sitting at the restaurant, and we decided to name him Maxwell. Maxwell Oscar McAfee was going to be his name. But again, we went to plenty of doctor's appointments. Everyone was praying. Church was praying. Just standing in solidarity with us, praying that we will have a healthy baby. And so that was that journey to Maxwell. And similar... Oh, and at this time again, I was back in the pulpit. I was pastoring again. So yes. I started pastoring again in May of 2014. And so we started traveling back and forth from Charlotte, 3 hours, to Smithfield, North Carolina. I think you went with me for maybe like the first few weeks. Then after a while, just shut that down because, we didn't want you on the road like that. We had got you, we had got you like I did something. You had negotiated, I guess, is maybe an operative word, a different position at work so you can get a 9 to 5, praying that would help, that a regular schedule would help have a healthy baby, so that you can have a normal schedule and a normal sleep pattern and some normalcy in your life.
Right.
And August 19th, first day back at work for me, back at the school system because, summer was off. So my first day back at work, and I remember, I think one of my coworkers, one of my bosses was joking about, oh, you may have had a baby, yeah, whatever. And I was in a training, and I remember you texted me, and you were in a training.
Yes, I was.
And I remember you texting me or calling me and saying you weren't feeling good, that you were feeling like you were having cramps, and you went home and you started bleeding again. And I remember leaving work, driving home, and picking you up, driving you to the hospital, to CMC Charlotte, Carolina's Medical Center, and the university location, and rushing you in the hospital. And doctor was there, and they tried to listen to the baby. Couldn't get it. The heartbeat was faint, so they rushed you into the operating room and delivered the baby. And I remember, calling, and you were 32 weeks, 5 days. And I remember calling, your mom, Erica's in labor. And I dreaded making those calls. I feel like when I made those calls, I just dreaded making those calls. So, calling your mom, Erica's in labor. And, they came down. And at the time, it was just me there. And I called my pastor at the time. I think he ended up calling me back. He called me back later while being at the hospital. And you go into the operating room, and, me standing, I guess, in post-op in that area, and doctors scrambling in and out of the room. And the nurse saying, Mr. McAfee, we'll get back to you in, an hour or whatever case may be, 30 minutes. I don't remember. But them not getting back to me. It taking longer. And again, people just scrambling in and out of the room. And I'm like, what's going on?
How long did it take before it actually got back to you?
It seemed like forever and a day. Like, literally seemed like forever.
Because Maxwell was born at 2:19 in the afternoon.
Yeah, it seemed like forever because I remember them calling, the doctor calling in backup for like another surgeon, another doctor to come help her with something. And no one said anything to me. Maxwell had already been taken out and no one said anything. So finally, and again, the details are very hazy, but finally somebody came out, baby's breathing, baby's okay. I think a nurse came out, but we're trying to, I don't know what they were trying to do, but they took him, I think, to the NICU or the PICU. Which one is it?
It's probably the NICU. The NICU.
PICU.
The pediatric one versus the neonatal?
Yeah, NICU. I'm sorry, NICU.
Okay.
But you were still in there.
I was still in surgery.
You were still in surgery.
Oh, okay.
And they had to get you back together. I remember hearing like they were having trouble. They were having trouble stopping your bleeding. And then they were still having trouble. And so the doctor explained to me that the only way to stop your bleeding was do a hysterectomy. And, me not knowing fully what that meant, but, my thing was like, just save her life. I don't care, just save her life. And then you had lost so much blood, they had to take you upstairs and pack you up because you had to get medevaced. So Maxwell was in the NICU, and they had to take you upstairs to the upper room, to the upper hospital room on another floor, preparing to get you medevaced to CMC Maine, which had more blood products, but you had lost so much blood, and I think at the time your blood wasn't clotting, and so they were really worried about whether or not you were going to make it. And of course you were knocked out, like you were knocked out, you were gone, so you had no idea what was going on. I think this was on a Tuesday too, and so they flew you down, and I remember periodically people coming back and forth to me. Do you need a chaplain? I'm like, no, I'm good. But that Sunday previously, I preached a sermon. I think one of my points was I was talking about praising God in advance. And so in that moment, my own words came back to my remembrance. And I started just praising God in advance that, everything's going to be okay. The baby's going to be okay. You were going to be okay. Just thanking God that God had it in control. So they had medevaced you down to the hospital. So you were going to another hospital. So I was still there. Maxwell was still there. So I went and saw Maxwell, checked on Maxwell, made some calls, and I had to fill out the birth certificate, name the baby. And again, his name was supposed to be Maxwell Oscar McAfee. But in that moment, at some point in that operating room, well, me being in post-op in that area, I felt like God's presence was in that room. I just felt the presence of God. And so I changed his name from Maxwell Oscar McAfee to Maxwell Immanuel McAfee. And Immanuel means God with us. Because I really felt like God was with us and God was with him. And so I go in there. Maxwell's just as beautiful as can be. They had given him some medicine called phenobarbital because they thought he was having seizures, but wasn't exactly sure. And I remember just going home, trying to just catch my breath. Waiting.
You went home?
Yeah, because at the time, there was nothing I can do. Like, you were at the hospital.
I didn't know that.
CMC Maine. Maxwell was in the PICU, the NICU. And so I went home for a little bit just to take a shower, kind of.
Was my family here then?
Nobody was here yet. And to catch my breath, I just had to get myself together because it was just dramatic. So went home for a few moments, maybe an hour or two, I don't know.
I didn't know that.
And then finally, people started coming in. But what was really interesting, how the Lord was, although, of course, we didn't want Maxwell to come early. We would have preferred for him to come at 40 weeks, but the Lord has his plans.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is that he was born on a Tuesday. That Friday, your friend Sherelle was already coming in town.
She was.
To spend time with you.
She was coming to help me before Maxwell came. Yeah, she was.
And again, we had no idea he would be born, but she was just coming, as a concerned girlfriend and friend, just to come hang out with her sister friend, just to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mother, she was out of the country, but she was flying back that Wednesday or that Thursday. And one of her layovers was in Charlotte.
Right.
And then your Uncle Daryl, he was on business somewhere
He was in Atlanta or outside
of Georgia, which is like 3 hours away.
Yeah.
So he was close by. So he instead of going back to Illinois, he just rented a car and drove to Charlotte, drove 3 hours to Charlotte. So, like, the Lord knew that Maxwell was coming that week because he already had family and friends in place to be there to offer support to us. The Lord had already orchestrated that, which is
amazing.
Which is amazing when you think about it. That all those things were already set in place. And so when Maxwell was born, my mom was coming into town. Your girlfriend was coming into town. Your uncle was nearby. My best friend just so happened that his job had flexibility for him. One of my best friends, and he was able to catch a flight from Rhode Island there. My brother and everyone drove down. So it was just, God just worked that thing out, man.
Mm-hmm. He did.
And I think Maxwell spent 29 days in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
But God just worked it out.
He did.
And that's the story of Maxwell. Those from BJ to Brielle to the birth of Super Mighty Maxwell, Super Mighty Max. So yeah.
So what do you think what really has God revealed to you just on this journey from the losses that we had to having now a child with special needs and a disability?
What has God revealed to me?
Mm-hmm. Like, what have you gained from it?
One thing I know for sure is that all children, all people are truly created in the image and likeness of God. So someone like you and I who are quote unquote able-bodied people,
mm-hmm.
Opposed to Maxwell, who is differently able,
mm-hmm.
we're still creating God's image.
Yes, we are.
Still have value. Are wonderful human beings, beautiful human beings. And so we're all creating God's image. Maxwell is not less than.
No, he's not.
But it's also made me realize from a pastoral perspective and a vocational perspective just how few ministries there are for persons who are differently able, who have special needs and disabilities. How, especially the Black church, we don't do enough to cater and try to meet the needs of those persons.
Right.
It's a lot of work.
No, it is. It's a whole lot of work.
As a parent, it's a lot of work. It will stretch you.
Yes, it will.
It's a lot of work. That's what I've gained. It's a lot of work. That not only affects parents, me and you, but it affects the whole family.
Right, it does.
Affects the whole family. But also that we have to be our child's biggest advocates.
Yes, we do, because
that we
they
have
don't
to
have
advocate
a
for
voice.
them.
Yes, we do. And Brandon does. He is the bigger advocate out of the two of us. I'll say that.
And we all could do better, but
Yeah,
we're learning.
We all could do better. But Brandon will go hard for Maxwell. He's not gonna let nobody mess with my son.
And then, lastly, that God is faithful. I mean, that God is faithful.
So how do you feel like you trusted God through this journey? To losing one child, losing another child, where you felt like, mad, to fully trusting God now that you have your child, that God promised us. Now that we have him here, he may not be packaged the way we want him to be, but he's still created in God's image, as you said.
Learning to trust in God to give me the strength, and the grace.
That's good.
To accept Maxwell how he is.
Mm-hmm.
To accept him for how he is, for who he is.
Right.
And that's a daily, because some days, no problem. And other days, it's a struggle. I mean, it's a daily struggle.
Right.
And so every day, asking God to give me the strength and the grace to accept our son for who he is, to accept our situation.
Right.
I'm learning and growing every day. Some, like anything in life, you have good days and you have bad days.
Mm-hmm.
But God has helped me to an acceptance. God is still helping me, dealing with me personally to not feel sorry for myself. Because sometimes, you have those moments where it's just kind of like,
woe is me.
Woe is me. Why us? Why is it so hard? Because it is difficult.
No, it is. Mm-hmm.
But to pick ourselves back up and keep on fighting, keep on rolling, keep on forging forward, to keep on keeping on.
Right. That's all we can do.
But also to talk about, to bring awareness. God has given me the strength to bring awareness to other people, to our congregation that we are blessed to serve, through social media, to bring awareness. People love Maxwell.
Yes, we say, or people say, there's ministry in his smile, because he's always smiling. Not all the time, but he does smile a lot.
People love Maxwell.
They do.
He's not our son. We're his parents.
We are his parents, yes.
So I thank God for who he is and who Maxwell's becoming. And just for the strength and grace every single day to meet the new challenges that every day will bring to us. But God's been faithful. Being here, surrounding us with loving family members.
Right. It's been a blessing.
God has been good to sending us a lovely, caring, compassionate nurse for Maxwell.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
God's been good.
God has been great. Yes.
For us having, jobs, careers that allow us to be flexible.
Yeah, that's a huge thing, because you never know. A nurse may call out, and we've experienced that over the last few weeks. Our nurse is on vacation, so we've had a different nurse every week, every day, and you just never know. You never know where you have to just drop what you're doing and come home and, handle whatever the situation is thrown at you. So you're right.
So God's been faithful. Even, we have some loving caregivers, and not caregivers, that too, but I mean, physicians that Maxwell sees, physicians and specialists.
And nurses that work for them. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so
they love him.
So God's been good in that respect. And Maxwell's just an easygoing, happy-go-lucky, loving, smiling, just take your breath away, baby. I just love kissing on my baby, kissing on him, hugging him, playing with him. Just love the baby. Mm-hmm. The boy, the toddler.
The toddler that's about to go to school.
I know. So he always be my baby. So I'm saying yeah.
So what encouraging word do you have for those women that are listening? Because remember, this podcast is for women. I'm just having you up here to share your perspective. What encouraging word do you have for the women and the men and the couples who are on this journey where they've experienced some type of loss, whether it's miscarriage or infant loss, stillbirth, or just, trying to conceive a child? What encouraging word do you have for them, Pastor?
Well, I would say first and foremost, and truly, trust in God. Trust that God will provide. Mm. And I mean that in the broadest way possible. Trust that God will provide caregivers, that God will provide flexible jobs, understanding, bosses. Trust that God will provide financial, finances. Trust that God will provide caring teachers at your child's school. Trust that God will provide. Secondly, for the mothers, just take it one day at a time. As mothers, you are super women. You all do a lot. You all 9 times out of 10 are the ones who are getting up in the middle of the night with the child when the child is crying. You're usually the first ones there. So take it one day at a time. Don't be too hard on yourselves because it's a long journey. So take it one day at a time. Also, to the mothers, take time for yourself. Take time for yourself.
Reclaim your time.
Yes, in the words of Maxine Waters, reclaiming my time.
Reclaiming her time. Yes.
Yes, you heard right. Auntie Maxine Waters said it best. It is time for us to reclaim our time. Not now, but right now. It's time for you to practice some self-care. If you experienced a miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, or are on the journey to having children, self-care is important not only for your physical body, but your mental health. Join my mailing list to get a free, like I said, free $99, Reclaiming My Time Self-Care After Pregnancy Loss Guide by visiting ericaandmcafee.com/reclaiming my time.
Yes. Take time for yourself because, again, it's a journey. It's a journey that's going to be filled with, emotions that up and down at times, different trials, tribulations, peaks and valleys. So take some time to yourself. Get your nails done. Sometimes every week.
Oh, hush.
Shop in moderation. But take some time to yourself, though. Truly take some time to yourself. Take some time to yourself. Be good to yourself. Couples, find time to spend time together. Go out on dates, vacation. You have to have that time. You have to have that time. And prayerfully, even before I close with that, for the fathers as well, the husbands, fathers, take time for yourselves too. Take time for yourselves. Go to the gym, exercise. Women, go to the gym, exercise. Just take time for yourselves. Both parties involved, men and women, husbands, wives, mothers, fathers. But finally, surround yourself with a village, a support network, because we need that. We need that. We cannot do this by ourselves. So surround yourselves with good people who love you, who care for you, who love your child, who love your family, who will give us respite when we need it, who will give us encouraging words and prayer when we need it. All those things, whatever we need, they will do those things for us. So surround yourself with a village. So I think that about, sums it up with the advice that I would give. I'm sure there's more, but I think those are enough. Those are some key things.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, sweetheart, for being on my podcast.
Well, I pray that it's been a blessing. I pray that this encourages and blesses somebody. And thank you for the opportunity. And I hope to be back on it again. And keep doing your thing.
All right, then.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. I hope and pray that this show was inspirational and a blessing to you. The show notes and links for today's podcast can be found on ericaandmcafee.com/podcast/EP3. Now it's time for you to tell your story. Visit ericaandmcafee.com for more information on how to be a part of the show. You can follow me on social everywhere at Erica M. McAfee on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I would love for you to join the community. We are now streaming on SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Google Play, as well as iTunes. So please rate and subscribe to the podcast. Keep the faith, and I'll talk to you soon.